the question of safety is so key. Trauma is the inability to feel safe after something has happened. It's a change, a shift in our neurobiology so that we are biased towards risk, so that we're biased towards danger. And there's often an inability to feel safe internally. There's an inability to feel the felt sense, and what Stephen Porges calls neuroception. And so I think we think of safety in far too kind of black and white terms for what it's actually like as a trauma survivor to start to come to terms with what it might be like to feel safe. I didn't know growing up what it felt like to feel safe because I was never safe. And so even if a therapist said to me, if I'd had therapy early on in adulthood, if they'd said, do you feel safe? I would have just said, well, yes, because I didn't know that there was a different way of feeling safe. So my sense of safety was predicated on I'm safe as long as I'm hypervigilant. I'm safe as long as I'm in control of everything. I'm safe as long as I know what's happening. I'm safe as long as I know what's going to happen next. I'm safe as long as I know everything. I'm safe as long as we're not talking about anything I'm uncomfortable with. I didn't understand that that's not safety. That's just controlling your sense of unsafety so that it's manageable. I often say to people about talking to the clients again and again and again to find out what their experience is like for them, and doing it in a way that's, again, really curious and really compassionate, and not assuming anything about what life is like for them. I was talking to someone recently and I related a story of when I was a foster carer, and I had a foster child who had been with me a number of years and lived in a household full of other foster children with me. And she said to me one day, she referred to a child in her class, and she says, guess what? She lives with her birth mum. And it's like, of course she lives with her birth mum. It's not what I said, but that was my response. It's like, because you're in the minority as a looked after child living in foster care. The majority of kids live with their birth mum. And it was, this child at the time was probably 8 or 9 years old, and it was just occurring to her for the very first time that other kids actually lived with their birth mums, that they didn't all live with foster carers. And that was a real kind of lesson for me in the way that she had perceived the world up until that point. It's something that I took for granted, because no matter what happened to me as a child, I lived with my mum and my dad, and we had a secure family setup. And so it never occurred to me that the way that this child was looking at the world was through the lens of her experience, which was people live with foster carers, they move every so often. So she didn't have any clear sense of what it meant to be a family and to have a secure home and to live with your mum and so on. And so she was surprised when she encountered someone that did have the opposite of that. And I think that's so true for us as trauma survivors in terms of safety, of I have no idea what you're talking about, really. It's that sense of we come up with a word that, yes, we feel safe because we're comparing it to moments of total terror. But as I said, we've only got a safety that we've created for ourselves through lots of quite extreme means, through controlling our environment, through managing our knowledge base, through being prepared for everything. Whereas experiencing, for example, via the therapist, someone who felt intrinsically safe in her sense of being, to me was completely surprising. So when she used the word safe and I used the word safe, we meant completely different things. So it's that curious inquiry about, if you're not feeling safe, what does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? What would need to be true? What would need to happen for you to be able to feel safe? When you feel safe, what's that like in your body? And starting to build up that dialogue over these really key core issues. Because certainly when I went into therapy for trauma, it didn't occur to me that safety was an aspect of it. That wasn't a word that I associated with my experiences. I didn't understand why my first therapist, who was trained in sensory motor therapy, why she was always banging on about safety. It's like, duh, of course I'm safe. Nothing bad's happening. And it took a long time for me to understand she was talking about a world that I just had never experienced before.